Hi, everyone. So I am so excited. I am going live with Debra Coleman. If you have not met Debra, you're going to absolutely adore her. So we just got finished doing a podcast. So
Yes.
yay.
Yay.
So you just created your a podcast. How long have you been doing your podcast now for?
I just started in January, so it's really, really new. It's still in its infant stages, but yeah, so just January of this year.
I love it. So I'm going to pop over on YouTube so that I can make sure and kind of check out for those of us that are joining us. So if you are on YouTube, please let us know that you guys are here.
Mm-hmm.
So we're actually going to do something fun. So we just finished doing a podcast for Debra, like I mentioned. And so I've agreed to let her interview me a little bit on my YouTube channel. So yeah. So
Yay.
thank you so much for joining us. So before we get started, tell everybody about your new podcast and kind of what you're doing.
Okay, great. It is called Have a Seat, Conversations with Women in the Workplace podcast. And I wanted to sort of take it out a little further and do a conversation around women in their careers, in various careers in various stages, and sort of bring us all in the same room and just have a chat about it. So that's what my podcast is about. Hopefully to introduce you to some fabulous women, maybe make some connections and just learn about a career that you always thought about, but never really knew anybody and wanted to learn a bit more about it. So, and learn from each other. That was my main objective. So
I love it. That's so awesome. And I love really the women empowerment piece because I think that we deal with such unique situations in our just, whether you're a mom or you've chose not to have children and you just kind of like living your life and what is that experience like in the workplace. So I love that
yes.
you're doing that. That's so awesome. Yay.
Thank you. Thank you. And I was thrilled when Melissa agreed to do a show of mine. I told my husband, I'm excited, but sick at the same time. It's like, it's Melissa. Oh my God, it's Melissa. What's happening? So very excited. She did a great job. Yeah.
I think the really amazing part about it is, we talk a lot about women empowerment and empowering one another. And I think that this is really the thing. I think I told you earlier that when you asked me to do the podcast, I was like, absolutely, whatever Debra needs, like, let's make it happen.
Yep.
I think you've been so supportive to me and my journey. So I definitely wanted to help you and support you in yours. So
Here
thank
we
you for
go.
inviting me.
Absolutely. Yay.
Okay, so I do not know what Debra's going to ask me. So yeah.
We're going to start off.
Friend.
Okay. All right. I got a few questions lined up. So here we go. One of the popular topics out there now is, let's see, having a seat at the table and finding our voice. So talk to us a little bit about what that means and how we can exercise that.
Yep. So I think it's really interesting when you talk about finding your seat at the table or taking your seat at the table. I think for me, it really kind of does mean in my business specifically as an executive assistant. On top of that, being a woman and generally supporting a lot of men. What does that look like? So for me, I kind of figure out like, how am I really impacting the business? Am I impacting the business? Are people listening to my voice? Am I okay? Do I feel empowered enough to, raise my hand and share my thoughts and opinions? And if I do, is it well received? So I think all of those things for me kind of that's what highlights of whether or not I'm able to take a seat at the table, if I'm given one. I always like to tell people that, look, nobody is going to do that for you. So you need to pull up your own chair, sit down and get to work. So push people out the way if you need to, and that's okay. And then I think just finding your voice on finding things that you're really passionate about or that you have thoughts and opinions on and starting to, share it out with everyone and make sure that you are, a lot of us have so much knowledge and skill that we just don't bring to the table because we're afraid for whatever reason. So just encouraging people to take that leap and be okay with sharing your thoughts and opinions with others.
Love it. So words to live by. We have to remember that. And during our show, as you can see, I took tons of notes. So Melissa knows what she's talking about, everybody. So talk to us a little bit about productivity tips. I know that was another great subject that's out there right now. What are some tips and tricks that you recommend?
Yeah, so I actually really suggest doing a productivity roadmap. And what I usually do is I start off with a productivity audit. I was actually just talking to my sister about this morning. So I think for most of us, we want to find more time in our day. We'd love to be able to do all these wonderful things. How do I have a full-time job and a side hustle and,
Mhm.
do a podcast or do YouTube or whatever it is. And figuring out how do I fit that in can be challenging. So I always like to encourage people to think about, where are you wasting time? Where could you improve? If you don't know where your baseline is, it's really hard to kind of figure out where you're going to go from there.
Mhm.
So I always encourage people to track their time for a little while, see where they're losing or wasting time. And then, from there you can kind of figure out, okay, I need to improve in this area. So I was sharing with my sister this morning that, look, you're never going to be able to have habits just tomorrow. You're not going to wake up and go, oh, I'm going to do this better tomorrow. But you actually have to be intentional in how you build them. So encouraging people to think about that and then figure out, okay, I have this gap and this is what I'm going to do for the next 30 days or 60 days to work on this habit until it becomes second nature. And then you can build on top of that and just keep going.
Mhm. That's key. I think keeping that habit and keeping those in place is key. Yes, because I am absolutely one of those people starting Monday, and then
I'm going to do this.
yeah, and that goes right out the window. By like 9:30 in the morning, I'm back to like being a squirrel in traffic. Ah! So
Yeah, so I
that's
think you just have to
fantastic.
build on them, and then I also think if you figure out, so for me, I have a productivity roadmap, and I say, okay, for the
Mhm.
next 3 months, these are the things that I'm focusing on, and then once I've built this habit, then I'm going to take in the next 3 months, I'm going to work on these three things, and then you're able to look back and really be honest with yourself and say, hey, did I accomplish that? And if not, what were my roadblocks? So
Exactly. And I like that you framed it in a way of taking it chunks, like taking it in chunks. Don't try to do the whole highway.
yeah.
That's why you have the roadmap, like break it down to in actionable and realistic ways. Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes you have to keep moving them over if I didn't do a really good job. So, for example,
Hmm.
one of the things that am currently working on is optimizing my power hours. So, I know that I'm most productive early in the mornings. And so, if I can look back and say, am I doing that or am I not doing that? And if I need to move it over, then I can, but at least I'm being accountable to myself. Yeah,
Love
there's an
that.
article that I can share too, and I forget the name of the gentleman, but he put together like 100 most the best hack. I can't talk. The 100 productivity hacks, and I like to go through there and go, "Oh, I'm doing these things," and then okay, I want to do these things, and then I build them.
Mhm. Love that. And I love hearing that you still learn and grow too. I mean,
I am. Yeah.
yeah. So another topic out there that's really a hot button for all of us is networking and conferences.
Yeah.
So dispel the myth. Why should we attend? Why are they important? And what should we do? Maybe in 2020, make some new goals, set some new networking and conference goals.
Yeah, I think conferencing for EAs is really interesting because there's so many, and it's kind of hard to figure out what do you pick from and what do you choose from. And I think the important key is really figuring out, what am I trying? What's my end goal? And am I going because I need empowerment? I think that's one group for like maybe APC or IAAP. You have so many thousands of EAs in one place. I think those are really powerful and can recharge you.
Mhm.
But if you're trying to do something that's really specific to kind of increase your training and education, then I think you need to kind of look at what that looks like. Where are you in your career? Are you focusing more in that really high level, intense, kind of really driving the business? And then do I need coaching versus do I need a conference? I think kind of figuring all that stuff out is really important so that you have very clear path for your training for the whole year.
Good. Love that. And you have some events too that you're a part of this coming year. And what are
Do.
some things that we can expect from Melissa Peoples in 2020?
Yep. So basically, we've taken this idea where we've had all these big conferences and people saying, hey, I'd love to have some opportunities to really deep dive. And so we're taking that idea and now I'm just going on the road. So I'm going to 15 cities this year. So I'm taking that content, deep diving and partnering with someone in that city. And so we kind of spend a whole day focused in. So, for example, doing something with Annie Kroner in July. I just did one with Sheena Hubbard in Houston. And so we kind of partner, which it makes it fun because it makes it very unique to the skill set that they bring. So it'll be very different than what I did in Houston. With what I'm doing with Annie in July is very different than what I did with Sheena. But we are deep diving into topics that are specific to the EA function.
Mhm.
And most of it is, an opportunity where we cap it at 30 people. So there's not 250 people in the room, and really able to build those relationships together, build your productivity roadmap. That's something that I will probably do in every conference, because I think it's, well, we like to call them EA Revolution Summits. And so I will
Love that
probably do
title.
that in every one, because I think it's just something that we don't do enough of. We need to do more of.
Yes.
So that will probably be fairly consistent. But yeah, so we get to deep dive and kind of pick Annie's brain, for example. She's very big into productivity. She has just a wealth of knowledge. So what I do with her will be different than what I do with Melissa Mosier, or, all the different stuff that we've got going on.
And I love that we can find you guys under one roof and that you guys are making those connections. See, there's networking right there.
Yeah.
That's a perfect example of what that is, and our network connection. And so don't underestimate it. It could be very powerful, right?
Yeah, I do think that finding, building that community, whatever it looks like. I think it was a week or two ago, I was doing, I did 3 virtual networks. So I like to call them like virtual coffees,
Mm.
and with just other EA advocates. So Rhiannon Ward, I did one with her, and then I did another one with Michelle Bodwich. So if you're not following them, you should definitely check them out.
Mhm.
And they're from Australia, and we just grabbed coffee and just did this. And we just hung out for a little while and kind of just asked each other, how are things going? What are you doing? And just learned from each other. And I think we could do so much more of that.
Mhm.
I do really think that building that community on LinkedIn or Instagram or Facebook or wherever is really important, so you can bounce ideas off of when you get stuck.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So what has that been like for you to transition from full-time EA to now a business owner doing your own thing?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Making your side hustle your full-time hustle is no
Yes.
joke.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been fun. It's been really hard. I think, just figuring out what my message is and why am I different, and, what am I trying to say personally? Figuring that out is not as easy as you would assume. When you're doing something else full time, and then this is just your side hustle, to where you kind of go, okay, now this is my full time hustle. What does that look like? Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, I think it's been challenging, but I'm grateful for partnering with some pretty amazing executives who's helped me have that business mindset, so that it was an easier shift than maybe 10 years ago, when I was, not in the place that I was before I started. So
Love it. Love it. And how important is it, do you think, for administrative professionals to find, or women to find that, I know we hate to say work-life balance, but to find that balance, in many groups that you and I are, members of, I hear, oh, I had to answer a 3 a.m. email, or I felt like I had to answer that call at midnight. How do we find that balance, or those boundaries, would you say?
I honestly think it's because we don't communicate enough, and we
Mm.
don't set our boundaries. I think that most executives will, if you're in an EA role, most executives will just listen to you if you raise your voice and say, "Hey, did you know that you make my life really hard when you do this?" Or, "Did you expect for me to respond to you at 3 a.m.?" I had an executive one time who used to go bike riding really early in the morning, because that's just what he loved doing,
Mm.
and he would get up in the morning, and he would respond to emails at 3 a.m. before he went on his bike ride. And of course, everybody in the whole world was going crazy, because they're like, oh my God, he sent me an email at 3 a.m. And in their mind, they thought that it was top of mind for him, or that he wasn't getting sleep because he was responding at 3 a.m. And
Mhm.
he was like, hey, this is when it's convenient for me. I'm just doing my thing. He had no idea that he was activating people and causing anxiety. And so it was just conversation. And he just was, when I kind of brought it to his attention, he was like, oh God, no, like, tell them just to ignore that until
Mm.
whenever they can.
Mhm.
So I think we don't talk about how we work enough, and we don't bring that up and say, hey, can you just clarify? Was that top of mind for you? Or it was just convenient for you?
Right,
I think
exactly.
we should talk about our working styles much more. I personally, I know this freaks people out, but I check emails twice a day. And I let
Wow.
people know when we begin working together, I let them know that, like, hey, listen, I'm really focused on driving these deliverables. So I check my email twice a day. If there's, and in general, if something is really urgent, nobody is emailing you anyway.
Right.
They're, IMing you, or they're texting you, or they're doing something, dropping by your
Mhm.
desk, but they're not emailing you.
Mhm.
So I just set the standard, and then people realize, like, oh, okay, that's Melissa's normal operating. This way she operates. So I'm just going to not worry about it until tomorrow. And that's just kind of how we've decided to work. I don't know why we don't do that. Why don't we talk more about what we do?
I know, right? Exactly. We should. We
We
should.
should.
We would learn from each other. And you touched on something that I wanted to ask you too about having those conversations. Find again, another recurring kind of concern out there is my exec doesn't make time for me. I can't garner those one-on-ones. But why are you putting that on them to open that door? Why don't you take the initiative? Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, I just talked with somebody about this past week, and they said, I can't get time with my executive, and it's always moving. And I asked the question, okay, but are they moving it or are you? And
Mm-hmm.
they were like, oh, me, I'm moving it.
Right.
Because I think that's two different things. If your executive is always moving it, then that's kind of a clear indicator that you need to do some work in your relationship. And you may have to convince them as to why they need to spend time with you. Versus if you're moving it, then that's a key indicator that you need to change your mindset, because you should not ever be moving your one-on-one to make, I mean, unless it's someone that's like very critical, like this, if, the CEO or something that's really going to impact business. Otherwise, I
Right.
do not suggest you move. The reason why is because they need you to be an extension of them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're only doing very tactical conversations and you're not really getting into strategy, and it's just a conversation of do this and do that, they're not going to see value. But if you're talking about how are you pushing forward the business, they're
Yeah.
going to find value in that. And then, yeah, you should definitely not be moving yourself around.
Are you also a fan of the different types of one-on-ones? It does it have to be face-to-face? Could it be via video? Could it be chat? Or is one-on-one FaceTime pretty much where it's at?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends, right? Like, I kind of say this to everyone. If it's my husband, we've been married for 20 years, and if you asked me, Melissa, Nick needs to do this, I would just be able to say, oh yeah, he's going to want it like this, right? Because we've spent time together. And I
Mm-hmm.
think the same way for executives is the more that you spend time with them, you learn their preferences, their working style, what they like, what they don't like, how they want to be presented to, all of those things. The more time that you spend with them and build that knowledge, you're going to be able to translate that into things that impact the business.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think that if you have to start off and you do things virtually or over your phone or, whatever, I think that's fine.
Yeah.
Um, but you just, whatever it is, you have to spend time with them. But yeah, switch it up, do it virtually, do it on your phone. But I do think FaceTime is important.
Love it. Love it. Well, you guys, that is just a small tidbit of what you will get in my show with Melissa. It is chock full of golden information. You will enjoy it. So please listen in. It's a great show. Thank you, Melissa, so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me on my YouTube channel. So now I do want to flip the script on you a little bit now.
Okay.
So, so talk to us a little bit. So you've been in EA for how long now?
Wow. I have been in the administrative professional game for probably close to 20 years. We're
Oh,
looking at
wow.
18 years. Yeah. Yeah.
And you have, so recently when you made the switch to kind of creating your own podcast, what was the
Mhm.
catalyst for you? And how do you manage having a side hustle and being a full-time EA?
Right. It's like you touched on during our show, it's finding those blocks of time. I was kind of like I said, the squirrel in traffic, kind of okay, I'll squeeze this in, squeeze that in. And then I realized I'm not really controlling anything. I'm just sort of band-aiding. So after of course, I'm not as lucky as you. I do have to go somewhere for 9 to 40 hours a week. But when I come home from work, I allow myself a few hours after work of just more like cleanup, touch base with guests and emails out. My husband also has a hobby that keeps him busy. So he goes in his man cave, I go in my she shed, and we sort of like just do our thing for a few hours. And then we say, okay, 9 o'clock's our cutoff. That's where
Yeah.
we convene, kind of connect again. So, and then Saturdays, but like you, I also have days that I just, nope, blacked out, don't touch, don't do. But yeah, it's been fun. I started it as a way I was sort of, plateauing and I really didn't feel like I was connecting much. There's talk of feeling siloed in these roles.
Yeah.
And I thought having a podcast and inviting others into my virtual living room and would be a good way to sort of find that spark again. So that's what started it.
I think it's really interesting when you're talking about when you switch over to that side hustle and you have to figure out like where am I going to fit all this in, and
Yeah.
time blocking. If you have not started time blocking, seriously, it's life changing.
Mm-hmm,
What
mm-hmm.
are other some productivity hacks that you personally do? Do you yeah, I won't give them all away. I know. But what other tools do you use other than time blocking that help you be more productive?
You know what? I'm a G Suiter. I know. Don't disconnect.
Oh,
I
I'm
know.
kidding. I'm kidding.
I know, but I was Microsoft up until a year ago. So I am a heavy, I use my calendar. I really rely on that. All of the different functions, it's the reminders that you can do, the color
Yeah.
coding, tagging, huge fan of that. I have built different calendars for different segments. So I have a different calendar for my show
Yeah.
that just houses recording dates, production dates, guest show recording dates, and then I have a calendar for my personal life, and then of course work. One of the reasons why I'm G Suite baby now is because the university I'm with is all G Suite, so that's why. But I use, in terms of email, I use a lot of color tags, a lot of, they call them labels, which I still have to wrap my brain around. So my email is just so colorful because I have a green for Melissa, an orange for Debra, a yellow for Paul, so I'd really try to color code that way. And you can sync that and have it connect to the same colors you use in your calendar. So if an email pertains to a certain task or responsibility, it connects. So
I love that you said that because that's actually one of the things that I always encourage people to do because when I go and if I do a one-on-one with somebody, we're talking about how to drive their personal productivity.
mm,
I typically, I can't say that this is the best practice for everyone because we all process things differently.
yeah,
And so there are lots of different productivity hacks that you can use based on, just how you process information and the things that you're already doing naturally.
yep,
And one of the things that for people that are already categorizing is if you categorize your inbox and then you then match it to the time blocking that you're doing on your calendar, and then you're just viewing your inbox by that category and you're limiting that contextual switching, that can save a ton of time. So I love that you do that because that is a huge, I think an important productivity hack if that's something
mhm,
that you're already doing.
yes,
So how many, I know that you just recently did Vanessa Neiman, and so which
yes,
is
yes,
amazing, and
yay,
we all love
yes,
her. So shout out to Vanessa.
yeah, go
Um,
V.
she actually, when she started, when I guess her and I met at a conference last year, and then she came and we went to the beach and did a YouTube video. I'm
Mhm,
excited for her because she has so much to say.
yes,
I love the article that she recently just wrote on her resume, and then she's done a couple other follow-up videos. So for her, that was stepping outside of her box and doing
yeah.
something that was kind of scary. So how did you get over the stepping outside of your box and doing something scary as far as like starting a new podcast? Like what was that moment for you that you said, you know what, I'm just going to take the leap and it's okay that I'm scared and nervous, but I'm going to do it anyway?
Well, you know what? That's a great question. I am a sort of a nerd bird at heart. I equate myself. Okay, I'm dating myself, but back in the days with Warner Brothers Looney Tunes cartoons, you had Foghorn Leghorn. Remember that rooster?
Yes, yes.
And in one of the cartoons, he was teaching the little chick how to just simply throw a baseball. And the chick would try to throw it and then it wouldn't work out. So he'd go to the little chalkboard and start writing out like velocity of the ball and the foghorn's arm shape and everything. I am such a nerd. Like, just throw the ball, just do the podcast, Debra. No, I have to. So I did research. I read so much. There's a lot of information on how to start a podcast. And I joined a podcast academy. And so I just did a deep dive because I felt like I had to have it perfect because
Yeah.
everyone else's shows in content seems perfect. But what I realized is what you just said, just jump and you'll figure it out. I mean, of course you need to learn like some technical stuff, but otherwise you're not going to learn until you do. So
Yeah.
that was sort of I had a crossover. Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that as women we struggle with is we want everything to be so like, well put together before we kind of
Yes.
throw ourselves out there.
Mhm.
Someone on the State of the Executive Assistant in the Facebook group, they were asking about doing mail merges. I was like, I think I have a video it was like one of my very first videos, but I hid it because it was so bad. And I went back to watch it and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so bad. But
Yes.
it was like, and I was like, hey, listen, I'll share it if you promise not to judge. But they were like, look, I don't care about the content of the video. I mean, I care about the content of the video, not the quality of
Hmm.
the camera or,
Hmm.
the fact that I couldn't keep a sentence together.
Right.
But sometimes, you just have to do it and then you get better and then you figure it out. So I love that.
Exactly. I totally agree with you. And that's advice number one that I get that I've done in my research. Just it's okay. They care about the quality, not of the content, not necessarily how you sound or whatever.
Yeah,
Yep.
and I still it takes me forever to do one video anyway. I'm like, record 20 minutes of content for a 5-minute video, and then I'm like,
Right.
oh, okay, I'll figure it out eventually. 5 years from now, it'll just be.
Right. Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for joining me in my
Yes.
video, and thanks. This was so much fun. I had such an interesting conversation just all throughout our morning together. So thank you. If you have not followed Deborah, please make sure that you go out and do that, and you can find her in all the things. She's super active on LinkedIn, and where can they find your podcast?
Absolutely. I am pretty much anywhere that you listen to your podcast. I'm on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spotify. So wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, you'll be sure to find me. And as Melissa said, LinkedIn, and I have a website. So check me out. I'm there. Yes. And
Thank you
I
so
just want to
much.
thank you, Melissa. Thank you so much for allowing me on your platforms and for being on my show. It's just going to take off. I know it.
You are absolutely amazing. I'm so happy to support you in any way I can. So
Thank you.
thanks everyone. Everybody have a good Saturday. Bye y'all.
Bye, y'all.